The Complete History of the Mughal Empire. Intro, 0 to 045. For more than 3 centuries, the Mughal Empire shaped the history, culture, architecture, and politics of the Indian subcontinent. It produced powerful rulers, legendary battles, magnificent monuments, and one of the richest royal courts in the world. From the arrival of Babur in India to the reign of Akbar, the glory of Shah Jahan, the expansion under Aurangzeb, and finally the empire's dramatic decline, this is the complete story of the Mughal Empire. So, how did a small Central Asian prince build one of the greatest empires in South Asian history? And how did that mighty empire eventually disappear? Let's go back to the beginning. Chapter 1, Babur and the Birth of the Mughal Empire, 045 to 2 o'clock. The story begins with Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad Babur, a Central Asian ruler descended from both Timur and, through his maternal line, Genghis Khan. Born in 1483 in the Fergana Valley, Babur became ruler at a very young age. But his early life was filled with struggle. He lost territories, faced powerful enemies, and eventually turned his attention toward Afghanistan. In 1504, Babur captured Kabul and established a strong base there. From Kabul, he began looking toward the wealthy lands of northern India. At that time, northern India was ruled by the Delhi Sultanate under Ibrahim Lodi. In 1526, Babur marched into India. The two armies met at the First Battle of Panipat. Although Babur's army was much smaller, he used superior military tactics, field fortifications, and artillery. Ibrahim Lodi was defeated and killed. Babur entered Delhi and Agra, establishing the foundation of what would become the Mughal Empire. But his victory was only the beginning. In 1527, Babur defeated Rana Sanga at the Battle of Kanwa, strengthening his position in northern India. Babur died in 1530, leaving the throne to his son, Humayun. Chapter 2, Humayun's Struggle, 2 o'clock to 2:55. Humayun inherited a difficult empire. His biggest challenge came from an ambitious Afghan leader named Sher Shah Suri. In 1539, Humayun was defeated at the Battle of Chauza. A year later, he suffered another defeat at Kannauj. Humayun was forced to leave India and spent years in exile. But the Mughal story was not over. With Persian assistance, Humayun eventually returned. In 1555, he recaptured Delhi. However, his second reign was short. In 1556, Humayun died after falling down the stairs of his library. His young son, Jalal-ud-Din Muhammad Akbar, became emperor. Akbar was only about 13 years old. Yet he would become one of the most important rulers in Indian history. Chapter 3, Akbar's Golden Age, 255 to 425. Akbar inherited a fragile kingdom. But under his leadership, the Mughal Empire transformed into a powerful and highly organized state. In 1556, Akbar's forces fought the Second Battle of Panipat, defeating Hemu and securing Mughal control over northern India. Akbar continued expanding the empire. He conquered important territories across northern and central India and gradually brought many Rajput kingdoms into the Mughal political system. But Akbar was not only a conqueror. He was also a remarkable administrator. He introduced systems for taxation, military organization, and provincial administration. His government became more centralized and efficient. Akbar also followed a relatively inclusive approach toward different religious communities. He abolished the jizya tax on non-Muslims for a period and developed political alliances with Rajput rulers. He also encouraged discussions between scholars of different faiths. His court became a center of art, literature, music, and intellectual activity. Akbar's reign lasted nearly 50 years. By the time of his death in 1605, the Mughal Empire had become one of the most powerful states in the world. His son, Jahangir, succeeded him. Chapter 4, Jahangir and Shah Jahan, 425 to 540. Jahangir ruled from 1605 to 1627. He continued many of Akbar's policies and became famous for his interest in art, nature, and painting. His reign also saw the increasing political influence of his wife, Nur Jahan. After Jahangir's death, his son Shah Jahan became emperor. Shah Jahan's reign is remembered as the golden age of Mughal architecture. Under his rule, the empire reached great levels of wealth and cultural sophistication. But Shah Jahan is best remembered for one extraordinary monument: the Taj Mahal. Shah Jahan commissioned the Taj Mahal in memory of his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal, who died in 1631. Built from white marble and decorated with intricate designs, the monument became one of the most famous buildings in the world. Shah Jahan also built the Red Fort in Delhi and expanded the imperial capital. But behind the beauty of his reign was a serious problem. A struggle for succession was approaching. Chapter 5, Aurangzeb and the Empire at its largest, 540 to 705. In 1658, Shah Jahan's son Aurangzeb seized power after a brutal war of succession. He defeated his brothers and eventually placed his father under house arrest in Agra. Aurangzeb became one of the longest reigning Mughal emperors. Under his rule, the Mughal Empire reached its greatest territorial extent. His armies expanded deep into the Deccan and conquered large areas of southern India. But these victories came at an enormous cost. Years of warfare drained the empire's resources. Aurangzeb also faced powerful resistance from the Marathas, Sikhs, Rajputs, and other regional powers. His religious policies were more conservative than those of Akbar. He reinstated the jizya tax and introduced policies that created tensions with some communities. At the same time, Aurangzeb was a strict administrator and personally involved in the affairs of his empire. By the time of his death in 1707, the Mughal Empire was enormous. But it was also exhausted. And after his death, the decline accelerated. Chapter 6, The Decline of the Mughal Empire, 705 to 835. After Aurangzeb's death, the empire struggled with weak succession and internal conflict. The Mughal throne became increasingly unstable. Regional powers began gaining independence. The Marathas expanded their influence. The Sikhs became increasingly powerful in Punjab. The rulers of Bengal, Awadh, and Hyderabad became largely autonomous. Then came a devastating blow. In 1739, Nader Shah of Persia invaded northern India. He defeated Mughal forces and entered Delhi. The city was looted, and enormous amounts of wealth were carried away. Among the treasures taken were the famous Peacock Throne and the Koh-i-Noor diamond, according to historical accounts. The invasion exposed just how weak the Mughal state had become. Meanwhile, another foreign power was rapidly expanding its influence. The British East India Company. The company began as a trading organization but gradually became a political and military power. In 1757, the Battle of Plassey gave the company major influence in Bengal. In 1764, the Battle of Buxar further strengthened British control. The Mughal emperor still existed, but real political power was slipping away. Chapter 7, The Last Mughal Emperor, 835 to 930. By the 19th century, the Mughal emperor controlled very little territory. The British East India Company had become the dominant power in much of India. Then, in 1857, a major uprising broke out against British rule. The rebels in Delhi declared the elderly Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah II, also known as Bahadur Shah Zafar, as their symbolic leader. For a brief moment, the Mughal name returned to the center of Indian politics. But the uprising was eventually defeated by the British. Delhi was captured. Bahadur Shah Zafar was arrested and later exiled to Rangoon, in present-day Myanmar. He died there in 1862. With his exile, the Mughal dynasty effectively came to an end. In 1858, the British Crown formally took control of India from the East India Company. The Mughal Empire, which had begun with Babur more than 3 centuries earlier, was finally gone. Conclusion, 9:30 to 10 o'clock. The Mughal Empire was more than a story of kings and battles. It was a story of migration, conquest, administration, culture, religion, architecture, and political change. Babur established the foundation. Humayun fought to restore it. Akbar transformed it into a powerful and diverse empire. Jahangir continued its cultural development. Shah Jahan created some of its greatest architectural masterpieces. Aurangzeb expanded its territory to its greatest size. And after his death, internal struggles and rising regional powers weakened the empire until British power finally replaced it. The Mughal Empire disappeared, but its legacy remains visible across South Asia, in its architecture, languages, art, cuisine, administration, literature, and historical memory. From the battlefield of Panipat to the marble walls of the Taj Mahal, the story of the Mughals remains one of the most fascinating chapters in Indian history. This was the rise, glory, decline, and fall of the Mughal Empire.